Hello, everyone, and welcome to this free episode of
It's the free one.
TF. It is indeed the free one. It's the Riley's remote one, unusually.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Riley's coming at you from his small submersible on the way to find the wreckage.
Yeah,
Trying to investigate what really happened.
I'm investigating the wreckage of the previous submersible that went to investigate the wreckage.
Yeah.
It's an old lady in the fly situation here.
You're down there with
yeah.
RFK Jr. and you're going to teach the controversy. You're going to find out what the deep state's been doing to all these submersibles.
James Cameron hates him.
But today we are going to be joined in the second half of the episode by Emiliano Mellino, who is a journalist and organizer with the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, who has been investigating labor conditions on farms up and down the country and how
That
farmers...
sounds like a laugh riot.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a laugh a minute. And how farmers have been taking advantage of the hostile environment and various dollar-short, day-late labor market fixes to further abuse and immiserate their employees. But because this is allegedly a comedy podcast, of course, we have to talk about the news first.
Yeah, I love the news.
Item number one, Jeremy Corbyn, you remember him.
Briefly, vaguely.
Yeah, has assembled a book of poetry. And look, you know...
I wouldn't say I fuck with him, Your Honor, but...
Look, and you know me, I will only do Twitter review if
it's really funny.
If it's really good. And after he announced that he was going to do this poetry with a stanza of his favorite poem, The Mask of Anarchy, you know the one, rise like lions, shake off chains, ye are many, they are few, the Shelley one.
The one that makes me feel bad now. Yes, that one. Yes.
Yeah, the one that gives you a kind of twinge of what could have been and makes you wistful. That one.
Yeah,
yeah. The professor of international relations and director for Center of Advanced International Studies at the University of Exeter, Doug Stokes, decided to have something of a poetry battle with Mr. Corbyn and has taken his pen to page.
He came in like Eminem in 8 Mile, right? He came in as the underdog. He was wearing the sort of grey sweater. Nobody thought that he was gonna rhyme this good.
Yeah, he had his mum's spaghetti on his shirt.
Yeah.
So Doug Stokes has written in response to this: "Frolic not with tyrants masked. In their glow you bask unasked. Utopian dreams Utopian dreams in state's cold hand. It's not the state. Turn to nightmares on command. Is this the peace for which you stand?"
Bars.
Alice, do you have any rap air horns that we can add to that?
You know
Burr,
what?
burr, burr, burr.
Yeah, I think I do. If you just bear with me while I scroll through.
Yeah, it goes
all
hard.
of the-
Such a well-timed rap air horn.
Fuck,
Yeah,
It goes hard.
The Gamer Horns.
It goes hard.
Yeah,
Bars for days, man.
It's very funny that Corbyn derangement syndrome has remained real among a certain subclass of professional
Corbyn derangement syndrome, CDS.
opinion of a kind of I'd say professorial opinion haver who has not yet accepted that they've won and gets so mad he's writing his own poetry.
This is the most opinion haver guy you've brought us yet. Is he's a professor of being the guy at the Institute of Advanced Guy Studies at Guy University. It's a nothing, and there's all of those guys for some reason will never ever forgive Corbyn for trying to make the country a slightly better place or engaging in any kind of sort of artistic pursuit. I think a lot about the Helen Lewis thing where Corbyn said, every working class person has a novel or a symphony inside them, and she's don't encourage them, Jeremy. And yeah, the ultimate sort of fruition of this was Corbyn announcing a poetry anthology with Shelley and a bunch of people, the dumbest people in the country, assuming that he had written this himself and going, oh, well, this guy is a terrible poet.
But I also just love that, how into the neoliberal 90s consensus must you be to write some Hayekian poetry in response to this. Utopian dreams in states called it basically a poem about how like public choice economics. It's perfect.
Yes, yeah, and it's so grim. Like the tweet that's like just got back from the centrist rally, everyone holding hands, singing "Better Things Aren't Possible." That's I'm used to that kind of shit, but like to put it in verse just feels like adding insult to injury.
Well, you know what else?
My name's Doug Stoke, and I'm here to say that means testing's the only way.
You know what we could also talk about, if you talk about utopian dreams in the state's cold hand turned to nightmares on command, is have any of you tried to have any water recently if you live near the River Thames?
Yeah, it tastes kind of like spicy.
Yeah, well,
I like it.
Oh, spicy water.
Well, it's about to get up quite a bit more expensive because Thames Water,
because flavored now.
Thames Water and the other water companies are about to hike bills by 40% to quote deal with the sewage and climate crisis. Which
that seems like an interesting one to combine.
Yeah, well, crises.
We're about to have to like stealth renationalize again. Again, another public utility. We're having to do some like minimum viable socialism.
And it's really interesting that this news comes at the same time that they announce that they're going to make Diet Coke like illegal. Basically.
Interesting, curious, even. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I have a $1 trillion idea for Thames Water. The thing that's going to get them out of administration and back on top, and that is, how like Transport for London used to be sort of like relatively uninspiring and stuff, but then they hit on the idea that you can sell people like gift shop stuff, like the little socks that look like the seats or whatever, or a little cuddly tube train. I think if Thames Water really lent into that and started selling a like water-flavored vape,
cuddly Fatberg
flavored vape, there's your answer.
Fatberg flavor,
sponsored by me, Sakir Sama. I think a water-flavored vape is the only appropriate flavor to ensure that children who hate water will not get into nicotine.
I think you could maybe say this is a situation, especially with the Diet Coke aspartame thing, where they ban our medicine so they can sell you their cures. So the reason that this has all happened, right? It's the reason that it has such an unsustainable debt burden that now it can't pay, partly due to rate rises and stuff, and not just that though, but also the fact they're having to
taken out so many student loans, should it?
The Thames Water went to go do media studies. But no, that they have this unsustainable debt burden, partly because they had to pay so many fines for dumping sewage. But the reason that they dumped all that sewage is that after they went private, Macquarie, which bought them for several years in the late Blair Brown years, basically sold all the assets and then borrowed a huge amount of money to pay themselves dividends. So
the regular kind of like hostile stuff that we're used to now, the corporate raiding.
Yeah, and so it just took a long time because that's a very hard infrastructure. We basically now know what happens when you stop maintaining water infrastructure is that it breaks after approximately 15 years. That's what we know. There's 15 years in it.
I sure hope we learn lessons from Matt.
And well, there's been it's been a test. This has been a study conducted by Harvard University. Thames Water will now be wound up. Thank you for your participation.
Go drink. You can just go back to how we used to do it, and you can. You could get some exciting 19th century diseases again.
Yeah, go down to the mill pond.
Yeah, the Fatberg was just a graduate student in a big costume.
Has anyone considered that there is an easy solution to this, which is that we all drink from the puddle?
Yeah. That's a good idea. Going down to the puddle in the morning with a big ladle. To bring back some puddle water for my family.
Or better yet, drink from the sewer.
Yeah.
Right, men, it is 4 a.m. British time. Every one of you who's been issued with a long straw, you will proceed to the nearest manhole and drink.
And if you don't drink, that means you're gay.
That's right. That's why you call it the manhole.
We've sent in the army to solve the sewer crisis by just having Britain's hardest bastards.
We have lined up the Scots Guard.
If you need to piss or shit, don't.
And they've all got the big curly straws, and they're all standing around manholes drinking all of the sewage. That's the way of the future. Yeah.
But so to finish off on this before we move on, though, right? Nationalization at zero cost to anyone is a very generous option, right? Because what it says is, okay, Macquarie, you successfully robbed the bank this much. And now we're going to stop the bank robbery, but you can keep what you took. You keep it. You got it fair and square.
Sort
it's
of
yours.
operating by like supermarket sweep rules here.
Yeah. While you own a public utility, anything you can strip out of it, you can keep. But then when the buzzer goes, it gets renationalized and built up again. So the next
supermarket sweep, but it lasts 15 years.
Well, you know who else, of course, ran Thames Water is not just Macquarie. It was a number of sovereign wealth funds of other countries.
Oh, cool.
Well, we wouldn't want this being run by a government, of course, because that would be inefficient.
It has to be run by like, not even the Emirati government, but like, or the Qatari government, but like an office of the Qatari government, maybe based here, even.
And this is lib shit to care about, but we are a laughing stock internationally, aren't we?
We must be.
This idea that you can just like come and get like a British public utility, run it at a profit, extract all the money from it, and fuck off again.
Well, they looked at Monopoly and they were like, "Oh, you can buy Waterworks here for really cheap. Why didn't we do that in real life?"
Yeah, perfect.
And they sold it to a little metal dog.
Yeah. Oman owns all 4 train stations
and a top hat. The dog was wearing the top hat, and they were just like, "Well,
it was a Qatari dog."
Yeah, it was wearing a Dior belt.
A couple more things.
Adorable.
A couple more things as well. I have a startup to do that's going to be pretty quick. I want to say, check in on an old friend, talk about the London mayoral race, and then do a startup. The old friend, of course, is Lordstown Motors.
We remember them, the false hope profiteers, the guys who are going to go to Ohio and be like, we're going to revitalize your economy by building the trucks here.
Yeah, well, the stock was trading at about $400 when we first started making fun of it. It is now worth nothing. It is gone. It is out of business. It is filed for bankruptcy.
The Brian Lordstown bankruptcy.
Yep. So that is, and so this is another, I'm just going to ring the big we were right bell.
Mm-hmm.
But the new CEO is named Edward Hightower, which is some Game of Thrones ass shit.
I was thinking sort of like Stephen King villain.
Oh, well, yeah, of course. The Edward in the High Tower told Reuters.
Fucking Randall Flagg told Reuters.
He's come from a reality where the Nazis won the war in order to bring this country back from bankruptcy. Because in that reality, this company did really well.
Yeah. Basically said that after Foxconn failed to invest in them because the business was not ideal, that they...
Foxconn? Yeah. Isn't that like from Metal Gear Solid?
No, that's... Foxconn's...
It's the people who make the iPhones and all of their workers have
nets.
to be contained by suicide nets because working there so miserable. It's quite Metal Gear, but not in the way you're originally.
Yeah, they care about mental health. Don't want people killing themselves on the job.
Yeah, off the job,
this big net.
Yeah, so basically, right? Yeah, it turns out the false hope company was selling hope that turned out to be false. So jeers
it's like
to
the snake
Lordstown.
oil doesn't even do anything.
I've tried to oil my snake multiple times, but he's not getting any more lubricated.
I like the idea of snake oil being oil for snakes.
Now, Alice, I want to hand to you for this section because I want you to put your little hat with the press card on.
Okay, I'm doing that now.
If you're feeling safe with Susan.
I am feeling extremely safe with Susan, and so will all of you be after I finish this segment. So we're going to do some like London centrism because we don't do enough of that on this show. You may be aware that there's going to be a London mayoral election, which Sadiq Khan is going to win handily. And so the Conservative Party candidate is just sort of like this joke position that no one really wants to do. As with all sort of
Conservative Party candidate 96_final_1_.
Exactly. And like basically all conservative politics in London is like this. Weirdly enough, you know who was on that train for a while was Kemi Badenoch until she climbed out into real politics. But this guy that they sent, Daniel Korski, he was going to be like a fun sort of like startup mind for us to deal with because he had ideas.
As I recall, one of them was he was like, what if we turned off London's red lights?
Yeah, at night in order so that you could drive faster. He wanted to set up a digital core of coders. He wanted to like install vents in the road to do carbon capture. He was a classic weird guy, you know, basically occupying the same space as Volt in Europe, where it's like, can't really do any real politics, and you can't really even be that conservative in London, so you just have to be like this strange mix of like odd things.
Well, they're trying to rebottle the Boris lightning,
Yeah,
they need a zeitgeisty Tory who seems not Tory enough to win in London.
But then he has since dropped out of the race to spend more time with his allegations of sexual assault. So now the Conservative Party are scrambling, and what they're left with is Susan Hall, thus Safer with Susan, who was she used to be council leader, I think, and there's just nothing there.
Well,
if you
I'll
look
tell
on
you
her
why
website,
I like Susan. I like Susan
Why do you like
because
Susan?
even though she was a council leader, all of her positions and opinions about everything give the sense of someone who walked into the council meeting to complain about, like, I don't know, like the low emission zone ruining her TV signal because of like 5G, COVID, whatever, but accidentally sat in the leader's chair and then just started leading the council.
Yeah, she's kind of perfectly like vox pop in that way. I don't hate her, but like she has, if you look on her website, she has 3 policies. Policy number 1, stop the ULEZ immediately. You will more cars.
Yeah, she is going to start talking about 15-minute cities if she hasn't already.
Yes, yeah. So like no low emission zones, no low traffic neighborhoods. You will be in the car all the time by order of the mayor or else. That's one policy. Policy number 2, she's going to give the Met Police about like 200 million more quid and rocket launchers in order to make the youth afraid of the police again.
Mm. Well, it sounds
they're
like
finally going to be policing the quiet carriage on the train.
It sounds like what she wants to do, right, is she wants to make the Met more like the NYPD, where it's like, we're going to stop doing austerity to you in the sense that you're going to have a mine clearing vehicle and like airborne entry to if teens are hanging around. Like, we're going to position artillery around the M25 and the police can call it in anywhere they need to under a Susan Hall's mayoralty. So long as it doesn't damage a road. If it does damages a road, we're not calling it in.
Can you imagine how many Metropolitan Police officers would die if they were given NYPD style equipment? Just like constantly falling out of helicopters, blowing themselves up, things of that nature.
Oh yeah. And there is one third policy, which is being a bit racist to Sadiq Khan, which presumably she'll wind down once he's not mayor anymore.
Yeah.
And the thing is, right, she's not going to win. She knows she can't win. And so the whole thing has this
So why not be a little bit racist?
Yeah, exactly. But the whole thing has this kind of like last day of term vibe where it's like, yeah, it's conservatism, but it's so lackluster. It's just kind of like, yeah, I'll probably do some shit, I guess. It's
conservatism, but like,
do you guys like that, cops?
Yeah, I like it because it's like, it's conservatism, but like having just woken up from a very deep sleep. Like, it's conservatism, but you've just had surgery and you've come to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're building on the success of Sean Bailey. Remember that guy?
Oh yeah,
the guy who went campaigning in places that weren't even in London.
I mean, the thing that I really like about Susan Hall is that sort of all of the Conservative Party's politics, all of the stuff that we know they get up to on a national level, is underpinned by an army of like thousands of people who are like this, who are just like pretty ordinary, like a bit reactionary, and just kind of like getting along and doing all of the bureaucracy that allows Boris to do all of the shit that he did. And it's just like, it's so grim because your reward for doing all of this for a lifetime of dedicated service is like you can lose an election to Sadiq Khan by a lot. It's like, cool. Okay, thanks.
You can be the Washington Generals.
Yes,
basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can stand in this career exploding election. I mean, look, I'd say though, we hear from Sean Bailey more and more every day.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. All right.
He's coming back.
I want to talk about a startup before we go into our interview. It's called WEEHEAD, and it's all one word. The W is capitalized, the H is capitalized. I'll give you a hint. It's a season 1 type of company, and it's as stupid as the Juicero.
Wow, that bold promises already.
Yeah. Oh yeah, WEEHEAD.
So season 1 implies that it's like a product that does an actual physical thing. It's not like some wellness bullshit, right?
Yeah, it's a Googa.
It's a Google. Okay.
Is it like a hat of some kind?
No, but
I've replaced a juicero by sticking one of those Philippe Stark juicers to my head and headbutting all of my fruit.
So logically, if it's like the Juicero, it would be a machine that squeezes the brain out of your head like it's squeezing a bag.
Oh, Neuralink.
Like it'd be like a hat that's a kind of like vice that just slowly squeezes your head until your brain comes out of your ear.
Hussein, WEEHEAD, what do you think?
I was sort of going to go with like the lowball thing that everyone was guessing, which is like it's a machine that sucks you off, but it can make it feel like someone. Oh no, that's kind of gross. Actually.
Okay. All right.
It's a machine that sucks off multiple people at once, but it's sort of like it's centrally
kind of in
positioned.
that vein. But I was thinking like something a lot worse.
Hussein respectfully withdraws his riff.
So my my more sensible thing is that it's some sort of machine that allows multiple people to think in one. I don't fucking know, man. Like,
right. I'll tell you. Be the first to quote unquote head in. WEEHEAD is the first spatial video communication device for hosts to perceive remote guests naturally in 3 dimensions and for guests to immerse in the real meeting space.
Is it a VR sort of thing where it's just like you can just be in one off, like you can sort of be in your house, but when you put your VR headset on or something along those lines, like it feels like you're in the same office?
That's pretty close. But it's not VR. It's a thing that you put. It's a head and shoulders sized contrivance that you place on a meeting desk that has several layers of screen.
Oh, it's a Star Wars hologram. Did you fucking?
Oh yes.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
My other idea was that it was some sort of thing that you put on your head and shoulders that makes it so if your boss wants to like, if you are remote and your boss like taps you on the shoulder or something, you can feel it. But that feels a little bit.
I'm going to
your boss punching you in the head.
So, I have sent you WEEHEAD.com.
Yes, you have.
This is the thing that they're advertising.
I hate that.
It is a head and shoulders shaped screen and camera.
Hold on a second. No, it's not. It's the head and shoulders of a Rock'em Sock'em robot shape.
Yeah, it's great if you're teleconferencing in one of Daft Punk.
Looks like Optimus Prime. It's fucking... But it looks like 5 phone screens taped together at really odd angles in a way that you would look at like a sort of Tate Modern exhibit in like 2005 and go, oh, damn, that's quite clever, actually.
It's so funny, given that it is just a head on a plinth, that it's called WEEHEAD. That has made it much funnier now. Like, the name was funny to begin with, but there's something funny about it turning out to just be a head.
And it's just like, it's whipping back and forth, like it's articulated on a neck so you can make eye contact with different people.
Mm-hmm. So
you could headbutt someone from thousands of miles away.
Yeah. So here's what WEEHEAD offers. It offers a full-size face and head gestures. Guest head movements.
I love it when I'm offered a full-size face.
Guest head movements are mimicked by the WEEHEAD's motors in real time to allow guests to focus on every aspect of communication. Eye contact feels incredibly natural, which I agree with. It feels incredibly natural due to the fact the camera is positioned right at the eye display. So also, ideally, you're supposed to have 2 WEEHEADs.
Of course.
Even though 1 WEEHEAD is enough for spatial communication, you can just use a laptop or smartphone with a conventional camera.
Yeah. How much does one of these WEEHEADs run you? Like,
okay,
what are you spending?
If you want to get the WEEHEAD Founders Edition, that's going to run you $1,999 cash American.
What is the Founders Edition? What does that offer?
Oh, thank you for asking, Milo. You get
is it an even bigger face?
Yeah, you get a huge face. No, you get an NFT.
Awesome.
Remember those?
Yeah, great. Those things that are still really valuable.
Do you get an NFT of your face?
That would be so much better. No, it's just an NFT that says WEEHEAD.
Amazing.
Or
loving that.
You can get the WEEHEAD Pro, which enhances sensory perception with the most advanced avatar technologies, a 3-axis motor for more realistic gestures, and a stereo camera. That's going to be $4,555 cash American.
That's a lot of money.
It's a bargain. Look, I don't know what you're complaining about. This thing is going to change lives.
You just get your like $9,000 and you get 2 of these and then, perfect.
And then we can be sucking each other off from anywhere in the world.
how do I put this? It makes you sort of look like a transformer,
Yeah,
as in like from the cartoon Transformers.
because the way the screens are arranged, it's mostly like a big T shape. So you have like one horizontal screen for the eyes, and then a vertical one for the mouth, and then the cheeks just kind of get like lost.
Yeah, like on.
I don't understand why they've done that. It would have been so easy just to have a screen big enough to show the whole face.
Oh, because you have because an important part of being on a phone call with someone is to see when they're looking to the side. And so you can see them in profile, and that's worth thousands of dollars.
So this is a machine that will like determine whether you in fact have a second screen at home and whether you are looking at that second screen when you're supposed to be having a first screen meeting.
Correct. Yes.
That's kind of what it feels like its only use is. It's like, oh, we can see by the WEEHEAD that your eyes are looking somewhere else.
Well,
yeah. His head has moved 40 degrees. He's looking at the hentai again.
They said, the futuristic-looking smart display provides an experience of physical presence of a remote person in the room through 3D screens and head gestures. The head-shaped device, I don't know what the fuck head they're talking about, enables people to have a deeper sense of intimacy within a conversation. Would you feel a deeper sense of intimacy talking to Chappie, but with his head cut off?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, right, it looks
I would if he
so
head-butted me. Yeah, that would be pretty intimate.
The way that it cuts off the face, it looks like you're wearing like a Corinthian helmet almost. You get the like eyes and the mouth and nothing else. It's cool. I find this very intimate.
Well,
yeah, a great use for the WEEHEAD is putting them all at Thermopylae.
Yeah.
Ilya Sadoshkin, the founder of Zero Distance, the company that makes WEEHEAD, commented,
Of course it's a Russian man.
WEEHEAD is an advanced robotics, state-of-the-art technology available for consumers. This device is for tech enthusiasts who want to touch and experience a part of the future technology we're working on today and support the development of our full-size avatar system. So they are starting with the head and they're building down from there.
Oh,
you know the phrase, the fish rots from the head? Well, the avatar is built from the head.
I'm very scared when they get to like wee dick. Like, I don't...
We build virtual head in honor of my father, who only piece left of him was his head. We found it in bowling ball bag.
The big idea for the future...
He owned all of hot dogs in Soviet Union. Met with unfortunate end.
The big idea for the future is to bring to the market an affordable avatar system for spatial full-body presence in a remote location. And the basically idea is, look, if it's too dangerous to leave your house, just have an avatar robot. And it's got like a chappy head on it, which is the plot of the movie Avatar. Surrogates, excuse me, not avatars.
It's within the Avatar universe.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things that led to Earth getting all fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is such a funny little doohickey, essentially. We're going to plonk your head on the desk, and then everyone's going to feel very intimate, immersed, and connected to one another.
When this thing goes bankrupt, as it inevitably will, we should try and do like we did for the Juicero and get like the chassis of one for cheap.
I absolutely want
to put it in the studio as a war
and
trophy.
the golden arm, put them together.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, baby.
Oh, we could build...
See if we can get a second
You've got a
golden
head
arm.
that can Nazi salute.
Yeah.
We're getting perilously close to building a kind of startup golem.
Yeah, the Juicero could be the chest.
Yeah.
Oh, no. The Juicero could be one of its, like, grabber hands, right? Mm-hmm. And then the golden arm could be the other hand.
We've got a startup man, a homunculus that can like look around, headbutt you, grab and squeeze anything you hand to it, and also do a Hitler salute.
It's useful. I mean, what if you're having a virtual Nazi rally?
Yeah, and also it's like we could build. We're basically talking about is building a Space Marine dreadnought out of just the various leavings of the different companies we've talked about.
Yeah. We can utilize bits of the Elon Musk standee somehow.
Its eyes are actually made from view glass. It moves around from Lordstown Motors wheels that
it can cook you a pizza just into like the torso region.
Yeah, but because it has the Lordstown Motors wheels, if it goes over a small bump, it explodes. Anyway, by using WEEHEAD, this is Pavel Rekonov, head of product, said, by using WEEHEAD, one can feel as if you have been teleported into the host environment, looking around and communicating freely with anyone, not constrained by the rectangle of the screen.
I would hate
Only
to be
constrained by fact that you are head on ball joint.
I would hate to be constrained by the rectangle of the screen.
WEEHEAD.
Hello, Rishi. Hope you're doing well in the rectangle of the machine.
WEEHEAD is exceptionally good at recreating the feeling as if the person is actually there with you.
Is it good at that?
Coming soon, ChatGPT integration.
Oh, fuck me. Wait, so you can like believe that you're really headbutting ChatGPT?
I have no idea what the fuck ChatGPT is going to do in the thing that's use case is to
What,
let
just because
you...
you're a large language model, you think you're odd?
Just one thing here in the group chat, in the Zencaster chat, I've put in a link to the LinkedIn profile picture of Pavel Rakhanov.
Yeah, he looks
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
I trust him with everything.
Also, is that an NFT?
I think it might be AI generated. He's got kind of a galactic background. It's very, very strange. He's also got the Cyberpunk 2077 haircut.
Anyway, that was WEEHEAD. A fun little... It felt like I was in 2018 again. I don't know about you all. We are now going to throw to us in the short future to talk to Emiliano. And we will see you in a couple of minutes to talk about farms. Bye, everyone. And from part one, we are now into our part two, where we are joined by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism's Emiliano Mellino, who is here because he couldn't get on to the Ed Balls George Osborne podcast called like the Best of Fiends or whatever it is. Emiliano, welcome.
Thank you. I got to fire my management. Clearly, I mean this is the best I can get.
We're the best of fiends.
You are the best fiends. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to have you on indeed. And what sort of sparked
Welcome back to our Guy Ritchie podcast.
What sparked all of this?
We get distracted for like 5 minutes in the interim between recording these two segments where we just do a bunch of Guy Ritchie based bits.
What inspired this? What inspired this this meeting of minds was
talking about like
this
a
guy's from the
legitimately very
FBI. No, he's not.
very serious social issue in the voice of like Alan Ford in a Guy Ritchie movie.
Yeah, that's right. But you have written an article on the frankly alarming conditions faced by migrant laborers, frequently coming under the auspices of like agricultural working visas from South Africa, Kazakhstan, and further afield to the UK, and the conditions that they face on behalf on the part of big grocery stores, farms, employment agencies, the state itself, a patchwork of regulation that won't touch it. And all of this leads to, I'm just going to read a quote from the evidence that you recently gave at Parliament. You said, Sybil from South Africa said that workers were not viewed as humans, but as chattels, and farm supervisors would refer to them by their numbers rather than their names. So can you give us just a little overview of how we got to this place and where we are?
Well, actually, to start off, that quote from Sybil, where she says farms refer to them as numbers and not by their names. Well, farm supervisors refer to them as numbers and not their names. This was actually confirmed to us by one of the farms. When we did a right of reply email, we emailed one farm saying, look, these are all the allegations against you. And the farm got back and said, yeah, this is a standard business practice across the sector.
Jeez, they didn't even deny it?
They didn't even deny it. No, they confirmed it and said everybody else was doing it too. And they said, but don't worry about it. This is not to dehumanize them. This is because of a business need.
Wait, you got through to the Panamanian banker at the farm. oh crap!
Just
I
like
probably shouldn't have said we refer to them as numbers.
It's like trying to thread that particular PR needle of like, it's not dehumanizing, it's just that for business reasons we had to dehumanize them.
Because businesses are not known to dehumanize, right? Like, So I mean, how we got here, I mean, the question is, where do we start? I mean, agriculture has always been a highly exploitative sector. You know, it's time and time again, it comes to the top of the list by regulators and others as the one of the most highly exploitative sectors. And it's not just in the UK, but across the world. Now, the way the UK is different to other places is, well, it's twofold.
Is it in a good way?
I'll let you guess. Well, let's put some money. Let's put some money on this. How many people say good, and how many people in the studio say bad?
The way the UK is different. I'm hearing better. I'm hearing really great.
So the ways. One of the things that sets Britain apart is that historically people used to come to do this kind of fruit picking work, and what we cover here is the sort of labor intensive farming. So it's not wheat and things like that, or cattle or chickens. It's fruit picking. It's vegetable picking, which is like highly labor intensive. So people used to come through free movement. So Romanian workers, Bulgarian workers used to come through free movement of people. But when Brexit ended, the government had to figure out a way to get all these people in. So they created the seasonal worker visa. And since before it was created, or before it was launched, every single human rights and labor rights organization was saying, this is a recipe for exploitation. Because workers are on 6-month visas, so you don't really know what's going on. You don't really know to get get to understand the country, get to understand where the support services are. People are tied to the recruiter. So the recruiter that sponsors their visa also decides which farm they work in. And if work runs out at that farm, they decide if they're going to transfer them to another farm or not. So they decide whether they have work or not. And, people are isolated and people pay a lot of money to come here because all the cost falls on the worker. So if you're coming from South Africa, you have to pay for the visa, for the travel. You're paying at least before you arrive, you're spending about £1,500. So you're £1,500 in debt before you even start working. So within that context, we also have like the British context, which is that there's very weak labor enforcement. There's very strong anti-union laws, very harsh anti-union laws. In terms of labor enforcement, there's this organization called the Gang Masters and Labor Abuse Authority. They're supposed to regulate the agriculture sector. They're supposed to license farm recruiters. The Home Office spends more on pens and paper than it does on financing the Gang Masters and Labor Abuse Authority. So they spend just like £7 million.
That's so little.
Yeah, it's less than what they spend on pens and paper. So yeah, it's peanuts. So that's how we get here to a situation where people are readily exploited.
Yeah, and I think this is interesting to bring up as well in the context of, one of the many contradictions of the British state trying to reproduce itself, right? Because what do you hear from Tory ministers over and over and over again? Nobody wants to work anymore. Why don't we just have gangs of children who are otherwise hanging out in the town center? Why don't we have them go pick fruit? And it's because the cost of picking fruit and vegetables and having them being cheap in the supermarket is borne by people the British state and hostile environments specifically have made replaceable and easy to screw with.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, workers arrive here and they say that they're surprised, like, how exploitative the UK is. You have people coming from South Africa and they're like, shit, I had people in farms in South Africa who have more rights than they have here. And a lot of people are surprised. Like, it's not sold this way, right? When people are being recruited in South Africa and Nepal, it's not sold like, oh, you know what? Like, the supervisor's going to shout at you. You're going to be punished if you don't pick fast enough. You're going to be living in a really dingy caravan where you're going to freeze over winter. It's not advertised that way. It's advertised like it's a great time. Look at this video of people picking and everyone smiling and everyone picking really slowly. That's what it's advertised like. And they arrive here and they realize it's a shit show. And the fact is, like, if people could go back, a lot of them probably would, but they just have these massive debts that they have to now pay off. So if you got the guy from the job center and forced him to do this, I mean, you'd have pandemonium on the farm because likely they wouldn't take the shit.
There's a detail in one of your articles where I think one of the farm managers is asked how long it's been since a British person has done any of this work. And he says, yeah, we had one guy turn up a couple of years ago and he left the same day. It's just sort of, it's just intolerable. And it's cool, I guess, that the entire sort of like sector of the agricultural economy depends on us being able to trick people into coming here forever. That definitely is, like, first of all, moral, and second of all, sustainable, right?
Yeah, it's a better life awaits you in the off-world Britain colonies.
Truly, yeah.
Yeah, well,
trickery has always been a big part of the British economy, and I think it's important that we accept this core competency.
What strikes me most, I think, about your article is how, I mean, we joke about feudalism on this podcast quite a bit, but how almost literally copied over into a kind of neoliberal context with an agency rather than a kind of, baron or knight as the feudal lord. How we have the same kind of tying to the land. We have the same debts and obligations. We even have the same fixing of the arrangements. Like, oh, you see, you owe me 5 bags of grain, and I'm going to owe you 3 bags of flour. But I shake down the bag of grain, and I don't let you shake down the bag of flour. These kinds of arrangements, and the reason that that's possible, right, is and this is what I come back to, why we say, well, no British person would stand for this, and you actually couldn't subject a British person to this, because do you know you can't threaten a British person with deportation. But what's constantly hanging over the heads of all of these farm workers is, you owe us a lot of money. By the way, you don't just have to pay to get here. You have to rent your bed in the caravan from us. And you cite in the article that 6 workers sharing one caravan can pay £2,000 a calendar month, more expensive per square meter than central fucking London.
I mean, and the space is smaller than a 1-bedroom flat. It's actually, regulations do not allow you to build a 1-bedroom flat that small. Yet you have 6 workers in a caravan, in three rooms, paying that and living in that space, and the caravan is falling apart. Like this guy Vajim, who actually gave evidence with me at the House of Lords last week, he was saying that, and he showed me a thermostat photo. It got as cold as 8 degrees Celsius in his caravan. He was saying to the House of Lords that there was days that he didn't know if he was going to wake up. There was nights he'd go to sleep, and he said, if the heater turns off during the night, I don't know if I'm going to wake up. He said, like, there were girls that were sharing a bed and cuddling to keep each other warm at night. I mean, it's dystopian. And yeah, like you say, people are paying, they pay for and there seems to be like squeezing at every point, because not only are they paying for the caravan, right? They're paying for gas and electric, they're buying gas, electricity cards. They are paying for the washing machines. These washing machines, communal washing machines where you have to put £1 in to run it.
Yeah,
they're paying for those. And I saw a photo, someone sent me a photo the other day, also the washing machines from like the 80s or the 90s, these are, so it's stuff that is in tremendous level of disrepair, but they're charging you for everything. At every little thing.
Yeah, it's vintage.
It's exactly
People
right.
pay extra for that.
They should put these farms in Hackney, and then then it would work.
It's the enormous cost of being poor, because at every stretch you are at someone else's mercy. That's why being poor is one of the many reasons why being poor is so expensive. And you say, if you want to tot up some of these costs, in other farms, interviewers reported sleeping in small caravans where farmers would house up to 7 workers at a time in shared rooms, with each paying £85 a week, extra for gas and electricity. Some farms demand that workers cover the cost of bed linen, with one charging £15 for a duvet and pillows, and £1 at a time to use the washing machines. Some had to bring their own crockery.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. People, especially if you add the aspect of debts, right? People rack up huge debts to come, and it seems that there's obstacles put in their way at every step for them to actually make money and pay those debts back.
It's also interesting to me, and we've had Sarah Tabor on this podcast before, and she has this point that she always brings up, which is that when we talk about farmers publicly, what we're talking about is not farm workers, but farm owners. And that sort of like gets flattened. And so, farmers have like sometimes pretty good political representation and pretty good lobbying. And when you sort of reflect that, like, they do this pose of like, we're the people who grow your food. And it's like, well, sort of, yes, but you're also the people who are charging the people who pick the fruit to, wash their clothes.
I mean, they're not even the supervisors, right? So the guys who are going to be the supervisors are going to be either, people have been there longer, so be like Romanians or Bulgarians, who are then supervising the Ukrainians or the South Africans or the Nepalis who arrived more recently, right? So, I mean, they're pretty disconnected to what's going on the field. And you're right. Farmers have really strong lobbying. Right? The National Farmers Union is not a union. It's a CBI for farm owners. And they have incredibly strong lobbying because also they're really good at bragging about their lobbying. They pretty much said that, a lot of the changes that have happened, like the creation of this visa and the expansion of this visa, right? In 2019, it was only 2,500 visas that could be issued. This year, it's 45,000 that can be issued, like a 2,000% expansion. This expansion happened because the NFU, the National Farmers Union, kept on lobbying for more and more visas so they could have these workers on the farms.
And if you want to talk about, you might say, collusion between capital and government to hyper exploit workers who are deemed to be expendable. I mean, this is sort of the example of that, right? But I want to ask another question, right? Which is, we mentioned the Gangmasters and Labor Abuse Authority. That sort of leads us into another cul-de-sac here, which is exactly where these workers fall. Like, who is regulating them? Because in your article, what you talk about is a kind of crack between local authorities, different under or entirely unfunded supervisory authorities that look specifically at farm labor, and how their particular status as living on the farm, not in permanent buildings, as employees of agencies,
An agency.
yeah, basically means they have no rights. So how can you explain that structure and where the regulation is supposed to land and where it doesn't?
It's a really strange web in the UK in terms of regulation of housing on the one hand and then also employment on the other. So with employment, there is a number of poorly funded employment enforcement agencies, which through the bonfire of regulation, David Cameron's bonfire regulation, have subsequently been worse and worse funded. So we mentioned the Gangmasters and Labor Abuse Authority earlier. And in the design of this scheme, and this was like something that the Director of Labor Market Enforcement said recently, it's like, well, the way the scheme is designed is that if you have a problem on your farm, who you complain to is to your recruiter. But the recruiter is paid for by the farm. So the person you're supposed to complain to about the farm is the person that gets paid by the farm. Then you can try and go to one of the statutory authorities, like the Gangmasters Labor Abuse Authority. But like we said, they have very poor funding. They have almost no inspectors. They have maybe 20 inspectors for the whole country, just a bit over that. And often, I brought a situation to them about a woman who complained about first being asked to share a bed with another woman, and then being asked to go to a caravan where there were only men from a country that wasn't hers, so who didn't even speak the same language as her. And she said she didn't feel safe doing this. She complained to the Gangmasters and Labor Abuse Authority. The Home Office was saying that, well, if people have a problem with their housing on their caravans, they can go to their local authority. They're the ones who should deal with housing issues. But actually, housing regulation says that local authorities, what's covered by housing regulation is just stuff that has foundations, is fixed to the ground, and caravans aren't fixed to the ground. So it falls outside the remit of local authorities. And local authorities can ask for that right, but in the whole history of this regulation, a local authorities never asked for the right to be able to inspect caravans on farmland. So these guys fall completely.
How interesting,
right? How convenient, right? And so these guys fall completely between the cracks. So if you have a problem in your caravan, well, your best hope is that your farm will deal with it. If they don't deal with it, you really have nowhere to go.
Well, no, because to inspect that, I'd have to give myself the right to inspect it. And I've asked myself, but I haven't given myself the right. So nothing I can do, I'm afraid.
This kind of feels like, and I don't know whether deliberate's the right word, but sort of when I was going through your article and just hearing you talk right now, one of the things that keeps kind of coming up is just the hostile environment, and how the hostile environment has sort of been the cornerstone of immigration, sort of this type of immigration policy for a very, very long time, but particularly after 2000, I think when Theresa May was Prime Minister. Although I imagine it probably came during the Home Office as well. And I wondered what your thoughts were on this, because by the way that you explained it, it sort of feels like, well, you've got this kind of perfect mix of chaos in terms of a state that's kind of degrading and institutions that don't really know who they are supposed to be kind of regulating or even how to do it. There doesn't feel like there's any really will to do it. And so as a result, and I think as you mentioned, particularly after Brexit, where there is a real demand for this kind of very, very cheap labor, and this very cheap labor that relies on exploitation. And so even though this may not be a deliberate extension, or this may not be a deliberate conscious act of policy, it kind of feels like this is a logical, not even an endpoint, but a logical next step of what the hostile environment was sort of designed to be. This place that you're either in and you're going to get exploited to shit, or it'll be so bad that you have no choice but to go back.
So there's a contradiction at play, right? Which is that they're always demanding for more workers. Right, the NFU and others, and even the government, well, a certain faction of the government is always, we need these workers to plug up these shortages. And I don't know if you saw the statistics. I think it was last year. It was one of the highest numbers of visas issued ever, right? And a huge increase in the number of visas issued. And it's not just for agricultural workers. It's care workers. It's a whole slew of workers that have to come. to plug up these shortages. At the same time, the system is created in such a way that it makes it incredibly hard for people to affirm their rights. And you mentioned the hostile environment, and I think we alluded to earlier as well, the way that immigration enforcement is used as a whipping hand, right? Vadim and Andrew, these two guys from Kazakhstan, were saying at the House of Lords that they were constantly being threatened by their manager that, you know, if they kept on complaining, well, you know what, we can send you back. You know, it was always that. And you know what, we can send you back. Not only can we send you back, but the next day, the recruiter can just bring us more workers and replace you. And so this idea that we want the workers, but we want the workers to be replaceable, easily replaceable, right? So it's completely dehumanizing people and just treat, you know, it's funny because there's also this other thing where the government's always talking about, like, you know, we're going to deal with the issue of shortages in the agricultural sector by automation, by bringing in machines. But what happens is that it's not that they bring in machines, is that they make humans be more like robots, right? And make them be more like machines. And yeah, that woman I mentioned earlier, right, who had made this complaint about you know, first being asked to share a bed with another woman because they didn't have any more beds in the caravan, and then was told, you know, actually just be with all these strangers who are men. A few months later, she was left without work, and she asked her recruiter to transfer her to another farm, and she kept on asking. And ultimately, she had to go and stay with family because the farm didn't let her stay on the farm. And then what the recruiter did was report her to the Home Office as an absconder, even though she had 3 months left on her visa, right? And what really puts the cherry on the cake is that this recruiter is actually a charity.
Just the abuse of the charity sector and sort of like charity status in itself. That's an episode in itself.
You guys should look these guys up. I mean, it's
what's the name of the recruiter anyway?
Concordia.
And so, looking at all of that, right? This is such, I think, a perfect example of, as we sort of have been mentioning, the direct link between like your usual right-wing immigrant moral panics calling for ever more enforcement, and then the state returning with extreme enforcement for farm owners. Because what the hostile environment does is it says to someone like Sybil or Vadim, it says, do not unionize. If you make trouble, they will deport first and ask questions later, which means you have no leverage. Because for whatever reason, there is still a belief among people that, by the way, as these people go back to their home countries, is going to be pretty fucking quickly dispelled that this is a good place to work. Vadim Sardov said, even in post-Soviet countries, no one runs a business like that by making people live under such terrible conditions. No.
So, you know, like, we used to recruit workers mainly from Romania to do this kind of work. If you look at the list of where the seasonal worker visa is being issued, Romania isn't even in the top 10 countries anymore, right? So each year, the recruiters go further and further afield to recruit workers, right? And so when I was writing about this, you know, 2022, they were recruiting people from Indonesia, from Nepal, from South Africa. I saw in the list like some guys from Chile. I think this year they're going to Bangladesh. I mean, it's, you know, they're pushing the frontier out. There was, I think, more than people from more than 60 countries that were recruited in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
But the Labour Party has a solution for this. They've got a problem here in this country with British people don't want to work fruit picking in these conditions. So they bring over immigrant labour and they're very precarious and they use that to make them accept the poor conditions. So fundamentally, the reason for this is that these people could be deported at any time. So our policy will be to make it so that any British person can also be deported to a random country at any time. You don't like working on this farm? I hope you like living in Sudan. Goodbye. We're going to replace you with someone from Spins the Wheel, Poland.
They never come over
like,
here.
So
yeah, Britain will now have a relegation zone.
Yeah. But so we are just burning through, like, we've got a whole world to get through, and eventually we will do it. Eventually everyone in the world who might potentially be tricked into coming here and picking raspberries is going to be aware of what a shitty idea that is.
Colonialism, you know, you guys tried it the first time around, you know, it sort of worked for you guys. Now we're trying pushing the frontiers the second time around, the other way around.
Yeah, or we've got to go Australia mode and get gap year students to do it.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Like, what happens after this? Do we just, like, keep doing this until we hope someone invents the AI that picks raspberries? Like, what?
That's literally the government policy. Like, the government policy is every time they're like, oh, we have shortages, and British people don't want to do work. They always, in every document, in every kind of policy proposal, it's like, we're going to automate.
Well, this is also what people in the Labour Party have said as well. I don't know who it was. I was thinking, I didn't know if it was Keir Starmer or not, but they had sort of said that, like, well, we need to sort of, it was that very, like, we're not the Tories in the sense of, like, we don't want to have as brutal an immigration policy, but ultimately we need to use technology to reduce our quote unquote dependence on immigration, right? That was the line that was used. I was also thinking about something that came up in a very, very old TF, and I can't remember where it was, but it was this idea that, the more effective way for, and again, it sort of highlights this contradiction because, the British state likes to sort of say that, it's because we're so generous and we're so kind, and, like, that's the reason why, these immigrants are sort of coming here and exploiting the system and all that stuff. But then at the same time, it's kind of like, well, no, objectively, that's not true. But also, when immigrants do come here, like, the government and the way in which the state works is very, very very much the opposite. They want to make you have, like, the worst time possible so that you never come back.
The immigrants we need, specifically, the ones we're dependent on.
Well, just like everyone. It's just like, well, every immigrant that comes here will just have a horrible time. And obviously, like, there are other people, there are some immigrants that will have, like, a really, really fucking horrible time, as the people in Emilio's article has sort of, are good examples of. But it does kind of feel, I think, your point about the contradiction is really, and one that doesn't even make sense is there. And I wonder whether it's because, like, the British state has found itself in a place where, like, it is very, very dependent on extremely cheap labor in order to function. But at the same time, it also needs to sort of prove performatively how brutal it can be. And so nothing is ever going to be enough. Like, even if the Rwanda project kind of, like, was kind of going on, that still wouldn't be enough. Even if, like, you sort of, blew up the dinghies, like, that still wouldn't be enough. And so there is this
so, like, standing on top of this human pyramid and kicking the absolute shit out of everyone holding me up.
It's dependent on the brutality to function, but it also needs to be more brutal in order to sort of survive politically.
And if I don't resolve the labour market problems, I will deport myself. I will be replaced by someone from East Timor.
And it can that's the thing. It's not static. There, as you say, Hussein, there's no place where it ends. It's a continuing process because it will never solve the problem. So it has to keep purporting to solve the problem that it wants to solve.
Things can always get more miserable.
The only solution is further brutality. And talking about stuff like AI as somehow being able to replace the people you're already making live like robots by constantly threatening them with deportation and putting them deep into debt is, frankly, it's a lie. It's a lie that the press is complicit in selling by never interrogating what the fuck you mean by AI. And indeed it's all part of the same big ratchet. It's all part of the same big machine, and it's all part of the same big wheel. And I guess since we're sort of coming up to time a little bit, I wanted to ask you, Emiliano, you're a journalist and also an organizer. If you're some random asshole listening to this show and you want to do anything about this, what can you, a random asshole listening to this show, do?
Christ, I don't know. It's difficult. So the problem we have is that unions aren't really active in this sector. So in theory, Unite should be organizing these workers, but they do not. And part of the reason is that these are people on 6-month contracts, so it's incredibly difficult to organize people on 6-month contracts or who can be in the country for 6 months, although they probably should. So if you're a Unite member, push your union to do its work in the agricultural sector. And actually agriculture was one of the earliest sectors that was unionized, Toll Puddle Martyrs and all that. If you are, the TUC sitting on a pot of gold. So if you're on another, it's like a dragon protecting this pile of money, which it doesn't use. So if you are in a TUC union, push your union to push a TUC to actually invest some money in creating, advice centers for migrant workers. I mean, there are 2 advice centers right now for migrant workers in this field. One is the Worker Support Centre in Scotland. The other one's called Work Rights Centre and covers, I guess, the rest of the UK. Support them. So
Can you send them money?
I guess no one says no to money, right? Actually, I should say that as well. The Bureau is a nonprofit where I work, so send us money. Help me keep my job, please.
Yep.
Actually, you know what? Open Democracy also just put out a fundraiser because they're sacking. They lost the funding for their Russia team, so they probably need money more urgently than I do.
So
support the Open Democracy Russia team, who do great stuff.
Okay, well, I think if you want to act here and you're not a member of a trade union, we'll put links to some of those centers that you mentioned, Emiliano, in the episode description. And if you, I know that there are union organizers and members and stuff who listen to this, so take a look here, please. Please look.
And I guess in a sort of broader philosophical sense, you just have a duty not to sort of accept the government and the recruiters and the farmers' framing of this, which is that it has to be like this and it has to be miserable forever until we invent the machine that picks raspberries, and then it's going to be fine.
The problem is they don't admit that, Alice. Like, the problem is that every time you ask them, they say everybody loves it. It's because no one's really looking, because it happens behind hedgerows in Kent, and no one's look what goes on behind hedgerows in Kent.
Well, no, because you might find people dogging.
That's how I got into this investigation.
An errant dogger discovered a bunch of human rights abuses.
That's it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Me and Sandra were just trying to have a bit of the other around the back of the Zafira, and then what should I find but disgusting treatment of migrant workers?
Maybe that is the answer too. Is just to, like, if what we're doing is raising awareness, and I hope so, then just extend that outwards. Go bother people about this. Go slap the salad out of someone's hand and be like, "You piece of shit! Do you know what it took to like deliver that to you?"
I mean, that's the problem about working at the Bureau, because we do investigations about the food chain, like across many countries. Like, a colleague of mine just wrote something about how, I have to be careful how I phrase this, but basically security guards at a farm in Kenya were killing people. And so...
I've read about this. Yeah.
We have a team that looks into deforestation, so I can't eat meat or cheese anymore. That's it. Like, this job ruined my life.
That's right.
All you can do is dogging, the only moral activity.
That's it. The last ethical work.
Emiliano breatharian arc incoming. Anyway,
that's right.
I want to say, Emiliano, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been delightful to talk to you, but about a harrowing subject.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. And also, as a fan, keep up the great work.
Thank you
very much.
Oh, thank you.
And
a delightfully chilling portrait of the way things are.
Indeed. And to our listeners, a few things to note. We will be doing a live show.
That's right. It's the live one.
Milo?
26th of July in London. There will be a link in the show notes to buy tickets. If you are a $10 subscriber, you get a £5 discount on the tickets, which means it's £10 instead of £15. If you're not a $10 subscriber, I am sorry. Those are the terms and conditions.
And there's also an Edinburgh show.
There is on August 4th, which I am endeavoring to get on sale. Oh boy, there are a number of people in the chain of command towards getting this show on sale. If I was in charge of it, it would just be on sale already, but I have to make a guy make another guy do a thing, and it's quite difficult.
Yeah. Milo is in the guy bothering industry.
I know, that's right, except I'm not bothering him about migrant workers' rights. I'm bothering him about, like, doing some mouse clicks.
And then, of course, you know it, there's the Patreon. There are more episodes coming this week. The bonus is going to be with our friend Hesse from the Seeking Derangements and Movie Mindset podcast. We will be watching the documentary that they made about NEOM. It's feature length.
So I'm so excited about that.
Yeah. So we are
also July 18th. Me preview London. Tickets on my website. Usual gear. Thank you.
Yep. Finally, a theme song is Here We Go by Ginseng. You can find it on Spotify. So, with all of the end matter now out of the way, it only falls to me to once again thank Emiliano, to once again thank our listeners, my lovely co-hosts, and to say we'll see you in a couple of days in the premium. Bye, everyone.